Okay, so I have a bit of a crazy real estate story for you today. This is something that I have heard of happening throughout my career, but I've never actually had it happen to me and my buyers. So I thought I'd share it with you today because it really freaked me out last week when it happened. So here's what happened. We are about a week before closing, have some buyers, and we've been communicating by text and email. Lots of communication happens, as you're buying a house. So one morning, woke up and had a text from my buyers, and it said, "Hey, we've got the closing disclosure information from the title company, and they're saying basically we need to get the wire sent for closing to avoid any delays." And this is a week before closing, and I'm like, What kind of delays are they talking about? That sounds really weird. And plus, it also sounded weird to me because usually what happens is I'm working with the title and the lender behind the scenes to get the closing disclosure out to the buyers and to get them their final amount. And that usually doesn't happen until 2 or 3 days before closing. So this was a little bit too far before closing also. And I hadn't had any communication like that with them yet. So it was weird that they would send it that the title company would send it to my buyers without me being involved or seeing it or anything like that. So those were two kind of weird things. I was like, hey, just screenshot that email to me so I can look at it because that sounds a little strange to me. So they did, and immediately red flags went up when I read the email from title that my clients had gotten. So I immediately started thinking, like, is this fraud, right? So I'm sharing the screenshot of the email with you up there, but I just wanted to kind of point out a few things that were the reasons the red flags were going up for me. So it says on there that they're experiencing delays recently with wired funds taking days to hit our closing account. Wired funds typically don't take days to hit a closing account. Now there are two different kinds of wires, and I think it's an ACH wire that does take a few days, but a typical standard wire takes hours, not days. So that was weird. They're also using the term closing trust account. That's not what closing companies use. They don't use a closing trust account like terminology. So that was also really weird. The other thing you can't see on the screenshot that I'm sharing with you, but I do know from seeing the actual email, the email address was wrong. It wasn't the titlecompany.com email address. It was another email address. Now it did say like title closing at gmail.com or something like that. Like they tried to use a title-ish kind of email account, but it was not from the actual title company, which was another red flag. And then they also say reply directly to this email to make sure that the buyers are replying directly to that email and not bringing any other party into the conversation. So that was a little bit weird too. Typically, if you're saying reply to this to anything, you're saying like reply to all so that all parties are involved or something like that. So it was worded weirdly as well. So super big red flags were sent off to me with this screenshot, and I asked my buyers to send me the email directly, which they did, and so I forwarded it to the title company. They're like, no, that is not us. There's no way. So I also found out too that that whoever this was sent a second email to my buyers, and it actually had an amount of money in it. So here's a second email that they got, another screenshot of it. You can see there that they're asking for almost $8,400 for closing from my buyers. Yeah. So if my buyers had not had those red flags go off in their brains and had just sent this money, they're going to lose $8,400, right? Because once you wire that money, it's gone. I mean, you're not getting it back. So I'm so glad that this kind of was a big red flag for them, and they decided to check it out because $8,400 is a lot of money at any time, but especially right before you're buying a house, right? A couple other things on here that I wanted to point out to you that were red flags to me. It's explaining all this stuff about some account that they're using, right? the title company is not going to be explaining to any kind of buyer what kind of account they're using and why. It's just dumb, right? No company does that. This is the reason we're using this account because we had this not happen. Like this says an audit. It says they had some customer put a bad check in. People are not going to do that. Title companies are not going to share that kind of information with you. Even if for some chance it did happen, something weird happened with their account, they're not going to tell you about it. So that was really strange. The other thing is, if you just read through this, it's just bad grammar. It's run-on sentences. So for a native speaking person, this email is clearly written incorrectly. Now, to back up for a minute away from this particular situation, like I said, I've heard of this happening over my 13-year career, but I haven't actually ever had this happen to my clients. One instance that I can remember a few years ago when I was still with the big brokerage here in Dallas that I used to be with before I started my own brokerage, there was an agent in that brokerage who had some non-native speaking English people as clients. They were from India, and so English was not their first language. They had a fraudster send them emails like this, and they actually did send them money. And I feel like that's, such a hard thing because they're not going to recognize sometimes if the email's not written correctly, because they're not going to have that sort of instinctual reaction to English that some of us otherwise would. And I believe the number that they lost was like $40,000. And I don't know whatever happened with that situation, but I don't think they get the money back. Like I said, I think once you send a wire out, it's kind of gone. Anyway, that's another instance that I've heard of it happening. Back to this other email. So the other thing is there's just too much detail in this, right? This is like a fraudster trying to control the situation of, I want my money and this is how I want you to do it. This is how I want you to behave when you're sending it. Title companies don't care how you behave. They just, they're just there to close your transaction. But this fraudster in this email is saying, like, fill out this form yourself. They're saying make sure you get the exact beneficiary account name. They're saying we want to make sure it's received without issues. Title companies aren't going to say any of that stuff. They're going to trust that the people that they're working with are going to know what the hell they're doing and know how to send a wire. So they're not going to give you all that crazy detail. And again, one more time, this is just the wrong email, right? So that's another big red flag. So backing up for a minute to just the general process of buying a home. When I first start working with a buyer, I typically send them 3 different documents to sign as we're working together to make offers and get under contract on a home. Number 1 is going to be the buyer representation agreement, and that's going to say basically that I'm authorized as their agent to make offers on their behalf. It also talks about who pays me, which typically the seller does, but that's the buyer representation agreement. I also send them something called information about brokerage services. That's a required form here in the state of Texas, and it just outlines in general terms who represents whom in a transaction. So it talks about the term intermediary, which means if I have a listing and I have a buyer that wants that listing, they can either, they may have dual representation and that kind of stuff. So that's the information about brokerage services. Then there's a third document that I typically have people sign, and it is called the cyber fraud notice. That's what that's for. It's for stuff like this, because these fraudsters, they're smart, and they, I guess, are monitoring emails and things like that, and maybe they have code words and stuff that they search the internet, the black hole of the internet for people who are buying homes. And what's super creepy about this kind of stuff is they've got to be monitoring emails, because these emails had the title company name and the title company closer. Like, they were using the title company employee's name in these emails. So they know that these interactions are happening, these communications are happening, which is super, super creepy, right? So bottom line, I was just so happy that my buyer's little, intuition went up and was like, whoa, red flags. They were like, I was, and they were like, this just doesn't seem right. And they reached out to us and asked us questions instead of just saying, oh, let me send this $8,400 to this random account and without checking. So it's just super important. It goes back to just basically some rules of when you're going to buy a home. Super important to keep that communication with your agent, with your title company, with your lender, and make sure that if you see anything funky that just doesn't feel right, you're asking those questions. Because this is a lot of money, and this is not something that people do every day. And so they're not, used to maybe wiring funds and doing these kind of things. But it's super important to always sort of ask your team that you've chosen to help you buy a home, is this right? And sometimes it's not. And in this case, thank the Lord that my buyers asked. So just a really creepy situation that I haven't had happen before. So I thought you might be interested in it. And that's about it. That's all I got. If you have any questions for me, let me know. And of course, if you're doing anything, buying or selling or anything like that in the Dallas area, I hope you do reach out to me. And if you would subscribe to my channel, if you like this, I would super appreciate it. It helps me out with the algorithms and all that kind of good stuff. So thank you. And I hope to be back next week with another video for you. Bye-bye.